We have already did part 1 in chapter number 8, right? Half of the things that we knew in chapter number 8, that is Silk Road, written by Eng Med. They were traveling towards Mount Kailash, right? And what was the last thing that we stopped? That is on page number 77. I'm reading that paragraph again. We finally reached the top of the pass, that is 5,515 meters. It was marked by a large chain of rocks festooned with white silk scraves and red brio flags. We all took a turn round the crane in a clockwise direction, as is the tradition, and Desetian checked the tires of his vehicles. He stopped at the petrol tank and particularly unscrewed the top, which emitted a loud hiss. The lower atmospheric pressure was allowing the fuel to expand. It sounded dangerous to me. Maybe sir, Desetian laughed, but no smoking. The driver, Desetian, right? They were traveling, Desetian, Daniel and the writer. They were traveling towards Mount Kailash. They reached at the height of 5,515 kilometers, right? They were standing over there, they were filling the fuel, they were feeling the atmospheric pressure which was very low, right? And he said in a, smiling face that please, no smoking over here, right? Moving ahead. My headache soon cleared as we carried down the other side of the pass. It was 2 o'clock by that time. We stopped lunch, we ate hot noodles inside a long canvas tent, part of a pockmark with salt flats and brackish lakes, vestiges of the Tel's Ocean which bordered Tibet before the great continental collision that lifted it skyward. This one was a hive of activity, men with pickaxes, shovels, trucking bags and forth and here, long sheepskin coats and salt-encrusted boots. All wore sunglasses, all the glares as steady streams of blue trucks emerged from blindingly white lake faded with piles of salt. By late afternoon, we had reached the small town of Hor. After they had finished their lunch, right, they reached to a place that is a town named Hor. Back on the main east-west highway that followed the old trade route to Lhasa, to Kashmir, Daniel, who was returning to Lhasa, found a ride in a truck. So Desetian and I made him a farewell. Right? With Daniel, there were 3 people who were traveling, right? Daniel, the writer Nick, and Desetian. Right? Now Daniel had a different route. He had to travel to a different route. And Daniel थोड़ा time होतो हमने accompany करवाया होतो in their car. Now his route was very close, so he moved out of the car, right? And he route from Lhasa to Kashmir. He was going to Kashmir. એટલે Lhasa નામની એક place છે. ત્યાં એ લોકો ઉભા રહ્યા. That is the writer and Desetian. They gave the farewell to Daniel, and Daniel started his own journey from Lhasa to Kashmir. Daniel, who was returning to Lhasa, found a ride in a truck. So Desetian and I bade him a farewell. Right? He got a truck and he started his own journey to Kashmir. Outside a tire repair shop, we had suffered 2 punctures in quick succession on the drive down from the salt lake, and Desetian was eager to have them fixed since they left him with no spares. Right? એમની પાસે કોઈ extra spares હતા નહીં. That means they did not have any extra wheels. એમને already કારમાં 2 પંચર હતા. The driver Desetian was very serious and he was worried about the thing. So they saw the shop, they punctured the tire and they started their own journey moving towards Mount Kailash because they did not have the spare wheel, right? ત્રીજું જો પંચર થાય કારની અંદર, right, wheelમાં, so spare wheel જ નહોતું. There was no extra wheel, so it would hold their journey where they were, right? So Desetian was a little bit worried, but they moved with the particular flow as they found the shop. Besides the second tire he had changed, he had been replaced by one that was as smooth as my bald head. Hor was a grim, miserable place. Hor જે place હતી, that was a very miserable place. Miserable place એટલે કેવી place જ્યાં કોઈ facility જ ના હોય. લોકો હોય, but you don't find anything which is good that suits us. Right? આપણે કોઈ જગ્યાએ જઈએ તો at least there are certain things which we require, right? We require water, we require shelter, we require good space to sit, we require good food, we require good environment, right? We require good people surrounding us. તો mountains છે. These places are covered with mountains. Right? Mountainous area, you can imagine how the people would be living over there.
So Hor was a very miserable place. There was no vegetation whatsoever, just dust and rocks, liberally scattered with years of accumulated refuse, which was unfortunate, given that the town sat on the shore of Lake Mansarovar. એ જે આખું town હતું, Hor, that was set on the lake of Mansarovar, right? Tibet's most venerated stretch of water, Asian, Hindu and Buddhist cosmology pinpoints Mansarovar as the source of four great Indian rivers, the Indus, the Ganges, the Satluj and the Brahmaputra. Right? Actually one, only the Satluj flows from the land, but the headwater of the others all rise nearby on the flanks of Mount Kailash. Right? બધી ક્યાંથી આવે છે? Mount Kailash માંથી. Right? That is what has been written in the textbook. I'm repeating it again. Actually only Satluj flows from the lake. Right? Satluj river છે એ જ માનસરોવરના લેકની ક્યાંક નજીકથી એ ફ્લો થાય છે. Right? But the headwaters of others, એટલે જે ગંગા છે, ઇન્દસ છે, right? The headwater of others all rise nearby on the flanks of Mount Kailash. We were within striking distance of the great mountain, and I was eager to forge ahead. And they were eager to reach to their rivers and move towards close to their destination, that is Mount Kailash, right? But I had to wait. Descendant told me to go and drink some tea in horse-only cafe, which, like all the other buildings in town, was constructed from badly painted concrete and had 3 broken windows. The good view of the lake through one of them helped to compensate for their drought. Right? એ જે જગ્યા હતી હોર, ત્યાં એક particular tea place હતી, right? That is cafe. ત્યાં જઈને એવું કીધું, you just have a cup of tea over here in Hor, right? Or else as we move ahead there would be no tea or no coffee or no cafe shops which would be available ahead. So he was sitting over there and he was drinking the tea. The construction was totally weird, broken windows. There was only one good thing, right? That was the view of Lake Mansarovar while drinking the tea, right? I was severed by a Chinese youth in a military uniform who spread the grease around on my table with a filthy rag before bringing me a glass and a thermos of tea. Half an hour later, Descendant relieved me from my solitary confinement, and we drove past a lot more rocks and rubbish westwards out of the town towards Mount Kailash. ત્યાં એ લોકોએ ટી પોસ્ટ હતી જે, right? That is a cafe shop. એ જગ્યાએ જઈ ચા નાસ્તો કરી લીધો. They had their tea and then they relaxed a bit over there and they moved towards their own or the main destination, right? Westward out town towards Mount Kailash, right? My experience in Hor came as a stark contrast to accounts I would read of earlier travelers. First encounters with Lake Mansarovar. Ekai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk who had arrived there in 1900, was so moved by the sanctity of the lake that he burst into tears. A couple of years later, the hollowed water had a similar effect on Sven Hedin, a Swede who wasn't prone to sentimental outbursts. જો એક પોતાની એક imagination કરે છે. The writer tries to imagine that place, right? That is Lake Mansarovar. એ શું કહે છે? જો મને એમ પૂછે that what did you see in Lake Mansarovar, or what is the memory that you have in Lake Mansarovar? Right? Writer ને કોઈ પૂછે તો writer શું કહે છે? જો I would read of earlier travelers, એટલે પહેલા તો મને history દેખાય કે જે early time ની અંદર, that is in the previous time when people came over to Lake Mansarovar, that is first encounter, that is Ikai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk, એ જગ્યાએ આવેલો, and he was there in the year 1900 and so moved by the sanctity, that means he was so એના મગજમાં એ image, એ destination એટલું એના મગજમાં રહી ગયું, right, of the lake, that he burst into tears, right? એને આંખમાંથી આંસુ આવી ગયા. A couple of years later, બીજો એક incident. The hallowed water had a similar effect on Sven Hedin, a Swede, that is a person from Sweden, who wasn't prone to sentimental outburst. એવો ને એક બીજો વ્યક્તિ હતો, right? એને એ ડેસ્ટિનેશને ગયો તો એને કોઈ ફિયર ન પડ્યો. He was as it is. So he is trying to analyze the place, that is Lake Mansarovar, as his own thoughts. Who? The writer, Eng Med English, right? Now it was dark. By the time we finally left again and after 10:30 p.m., we drew up outside a guest house in Darchen for what turned out to be another trouble night. હવે રાત થઈ ગઈ હતી 10:30 થઈ ગયા. So it was the time to relax, it was the time to sleep, right? They were outside a guest house. A guest house ની બહાર હતા એ લોકો. That is a place in Darchen. What turned out to be another troubled night. What turned out to be another troubled night. હવે એ જે જગ્યાએ એ લોકોએ રેસ્ટ કર્યું, right? Darchenમાં એક હોટેલમાં, ત્યાં પણ એ લોકોને પ્રોબ્લેમ, right? That was again a trouble for them at that place. Kicking around in the open air, rubbish dump that passed from the town of Hor had set off my cold once more, though if truth be told, it had never quite disappeared with my herbal tea. One of my nostrils was blocked again as I lay down to sleep. I wasn't convinced that the other would provide me sufficient oxygen. What was the problem? જે રાઇટર હતો ને, રાઈટ, એના મગજમાં બે વિચાર ચાલતા. એક તો એ પેલી જગ્યા, that is Hor, that he was not at all convinced with. Even the herbal tree that he drank over there, that is he drank over there, he was not satisfied with that particular tea because the place was so filthy and dirty કે એના મગજમાં એ જ વિચાર આવતા હતા કે હું કેવી ગંદી જગ્યાએથી પાસ થયો છું. Right? That was the first thing, that was the trouble that was going on in his mind. And the second thing that he was in trouble with, એનું એક નાક બંધ થઈ ગયું. His nose was being blocked by the nostril, right? Sardi થઈ જાય એટલે when we have cold and cough, right? We are not able to breathe properly. હવે અહીંયા એ સિચ્યુએશન હતી, there was one nose through which that was open and the other nose was completely blocked, right? So it was very difficult for him to get the oxygen, right? One of my nostrils was blocked again and I laid down to sleep. I wasn't convinced that the other would provide me with sufficient oxygen. My watch told me that I was at 4,760 meters. In the watch pramane એ કેટલું above sea level હતો? 4,760 meters. It wasn't much higher than Bravo, and there I would be gasping for oxygen several times every night. I would grow accustomed to this nocturnal disturbance by now, but they still scared me. Right? નસકોરા બોલાવે ને, નાક બંધ થઈ જાય, જેના ઘણા લોકોને એવી ટેવ હોય, right? નસકોરા ક્યારે વાગે, right? જે લોકોને રાત્રે ઊંઘમાં શ્વાસ લેવામાં તકલીફ પડતી હોય, right? બોડીને પૂરું ઓક્સિજન ના મળતું હોય એટલે નસકોરા વાગતા હોય. So he was, scared at that point of time, right? Then I am about almost 4,760 meters, right? I am not even able to get sufficient oxygen over there, right? And he was a bit scared. Tired and hungry, I started breathing through my mouth. He was tired, he was hungry. નાક બંધ થઈ જાય એટલે automatically મોઢું ખુલી જાય. So he was, breathing from his mouth. After a while, I switched to a single nostril, power which seemed to be admitting enough oxygen. But just I was drifting off, I woke up abruptly. Right? પછી એક નાક જે હતું, જેનું એક નાક ઓપન હતું, he was trying to get the oxygen from one nose which was open, and he tried to sleep, and suddenly he woke up. Something was wrong. My chest felt strangely heavy. હવે એની ચેસ્ટમાં strange feel થતું હતું. He was feeling very heavy in his chest. And I sat up. A movement that cleared my nasal passages almost instantly and relieved the feeling in my chest. Curious, I thought. હવે suddenly એ જેવો અચાનક ઊંઘમાંથી બેઠો થઈ ગયો, and within few seconds, right, એનું જે nostril હતું, જે block થઈ ગયું હતું, right, that was clear. That was clear. And એને જે chestમાં pain થતું હતું, even that was gone. So he was, he was curious. He was thinking, what is happening? 2 minutes પહેલા મારું નાક બંધ થઈ ગયું હતું, my nostril was blocked. I had a heavy feeling in my chest, and suddenly I woke up and everything is normal. What is happening, right? I lay back down and tried again. Same result. I was on the point of disappearing into the land of Nod when something told me not to. It must have been those emergency electrical impulses again, but this was not the same as the previous occasions. This time I wasn't gasping for breath. I was simply not allowed to go to sleep. હવે એનું નાક ખુલી ગયું તો જો એને બીજો વિચાર આવતો that something is not okay. Something is not Okay, I'm trying to get the sleep, my nose is open, I'm not, having any troubles in my, taking oxygens, but as soon as I try to sleep, right, something is there which is not allowing me to sleep. Right? હવે એને બીજા વિચાર આવતા હતા. અચાનક આવું થઈ ગયું, નાક બંધ હતું, નાક ખુલી ગયું, ઓક્સિજન ઓછું હતું, ઓક્સિજન પૂરું પડવા માંડ્યું. Again he went to sleep. જેવી આંખ બંધ કરી એને એવા વિચાર આવવા માંડ્યા, and again he woke up. There is something that is wrong which is not making me or allowing me to sleep, right? Sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. હવે પાછો બેઠો થઈ ગયો, and that made him feel better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. But as soon as I lay down, my sinuses filled and my chest was hot. જેવો એ પાછો સુવે ને એનું નાક આમ કહેવાય ને એને પાછા વિચાર આવે that my nose is going to block again and I'm going to feel very heavy in my chest, right? I tried propping myself up against the wall, but now I could not manage to relax enough to drop off. I couldn't put my finger on the reason, but I was afraid to go to sleep. A little voice inside me was saying that if I did, I might never wake up again. So I stayed awake all night. જેવો એને પાછો વિચાર કર્યો કે હું સૂઈ જાઉં, એના મગજમાં પાછો એવો વિચાર આવતો હતો કે જો હું સૂઈ જઈશ તો હું સવારે ઉઠી શકીશ નહીં. I would never be able to wake up again, right? So I stayed awake all night. એટલે આખી રાત એ જાય. Tessetian took me to Darjin Medical College. એટલે બીજા દિવસે Tessetian એ જે ડ્રાઈવર હતો એ એને ક્યાં લઈ ગયો? મેડિકલ કોલેજ. The following morning, the medical college at Darjin was new and looked like a monastery from the outside, with a very solid door that led into a large courtyard. Courtyard is the entrance, right? The entrance that is too big. He went into the medical college with Tessetian, right? We found the consultancy room, which was dark and cold and occupied by a Tibetan doctor. Who was there in the medical college? A Tibetan doctor, who wore none of the paraphernalia that I would be expecting. When doctor no je dress hoy ne, right, white hoy generally, એવું કોઈ જ dressing sense એને પહેરેલું નહોતું in Tibet, right, in the medical college, that I would have been expecting. No white coat, see, no white coat, the white dress, right? No white coat, he looked like any other Tibetan with a thick pullover and woolly hat. When I explained my sleepless symptoms and my sudden aversion to lying down, he shot me with a few questions while feeling the veins in my wrist, right? જેવું રાઇટરે, that is Nick Middleton, એને પોતાનો વ્યૂ આપ્યો કે મારી જોડે આવું થાય છે, right? હું જેવો સુવા જાઉં છું, I try to sleep again, I wake up. I try to sleep again, I get the thoughts that if I go to the sleep, I'm never going to wake up again, right? જેવો હું બેઠો થઉં છું, I start feeling better and મારા nostrils છે ઓપન થઈ જાય છે, and as soon as I sleep again, my nose gets blocked and I'm not even able to get the proper oxygen, right? એટલે what happened? ડોક્ટરે બધું સાંભળ્યું, so he was checking his wrist, એની wrist check કરતો હતો, and he countered with a few short questions, right? It is cold, he said finally through Tessetian. A cold and the effects of altitude. I'll give you something for it. Now doctor એને શું કીધું? It is too cold over here, right? એના લીધે આને આવું થાય છે. Nick Middleton. That is why he's suffering, right? A cold and the effects of altitude. Altitude એટલે heights, right? એટલી heights ઉપર હતા, so obviously you are not going to get that much amount of proper oxygen, right? I'll give you something for it. I will give you something for it. I asked him if he thought I would recover enough to be able to do the Kora. Oh yes, he said you will be fine. એટલે Nick Middleton એ પૂછ્યું that will I be able to complete the journey? Will I be able to complete the Kora? A doctor એને જવાબ આપ્યો, don't worry, you will be able to complete the journey, right? I walked out of the medical college clutching a broken envelope stuffed with 15 screws of papers. I had a 5-day course of Tibetan medicine. 5 દિવસનો એનો મેડિસિનનો કોર્સ ચાલ્યો, right? Which I started right away. I opened after a breakfast package and I found it contained a brown powder that I had to take with hot water. It tasted just like cinnamon. Now, what is that actually? That I also don't know, right? The contents of the lunchtime and the bedtime packages were less obviously indefinable. Both contained small spherical brown pellets, medicines, right? They looked suspiciously like sheep dung. They looked like sheep dung. Sheepનું dung હોય ને, right? એના જેવી એને medicines આપેલી હતી, Tibetan doctor. But of course, I took them. He had to take it. He didn't have any option. That night, after my first full day course, I slept very soundly. પહેલા દિવસનો એ કોર્સ કમ્પ્લીટ કર્યો અને જેવો એ કોર્સ કમ્પ્લીટ થયો, at that night he was able to sleep very calmly, right? Like a log, not a dead man. Like a log, not a dead man, right? Moving ahead. Once he saw that I was going to leave, Decidians left me to return to Lhasa. Once he saw that I was going to live, એટલે Decidian ને ખબર પડી ગઈ કે હવે આ એકદમ નોર્મલ થતો જાય છે. Decidians left me to return to Lhasa. As a Buddhist, he told me he knew that it didn't really matter if I passed away, but he thought that it would be bad for business, right? Darjeeling didn't look so horrible after a good night's sleep. It was still dusty, partially derelict and punctuated by heaps of rubble and refuse. But the sun shone brilliantly in the clear blue sky, and the outlook across the plain to the south gave me a vision of the Himalayas, commanded by a huge snow-capped mountain, Gurla Mandhata, with just a wisp of cloud suspended over a summit. Right? Now he slept very calmly on that night, and on the next morning, right? It was a very clear blue sky, and the outlook across the plain, એટલે એ બહારનો જે વ્યૂ હતો, right, to the south gave me the vision, એટલે એને જોયું Himalayas commanded by huge snow. Himalayas commanded by huge snow suspended over its summit, that is on the top, right? Mandhata with just a wisp of cloud. હવે એ Himalayas એટલા હાઈટ ઉપર હતા કે clouds પણ નીચે દેખાતા, right? With a wisp of cloud suspended over its summit, right? The town had a couple of rudimentary general stores. હવે એ જે town હતો ત્યાં general stores હતા, selling Chinese cigarettes, soap and other basic provisions, as well as in the afternoon for a game of pool. The battered table looked supremely incourteous in an open air, while nearby women washed their long hair in the icy water of the narrow brook that babbled down past my guest house. Darchan felt relaxed and unhurried, but for me it came with a significant drawback. There were no pilgrims. Right? એ લોકો બહુ નજીક હતા એમની જર્ની અને એમના ડેસ્ટિનેશન, right? And on the next morning when they were there in that particular guest house, he saw કે ઘણી બધી વસ્તુ ત્યાં available છે. That is general store, Chinese cigarettes, soaps, basic things which we require, right? In front of one man gathered in afternoon, ત્યાં કેટલા લોકો હતા એ afternoon માં ભેગા થતા હતા. They used to play pool over there. The table looking supremely incourteous in the open air. The table looked very beautiful in the open air. While nearby women, એટલે એ જે એરિયા હતો ત્યાં women હતી, they were washing their hairs with the icy water, right? Darchan felt relaxed. And બહુ એકદમ relaxed with, wow, this is good place to have it, right? And unhurried, એને કોઈ જ ઉતાવળ નથી. But for me, that is for Nick Middleton, right? It came with a significant drawback. There were no pilgrims. ત્યાં કોઈ માનતા જે માને ને અને પિલગ્રીમેજ કોઈ ટેમ્પલ્સ અથવા કોઈ મંદિર જે હોવું જોઈએ એ હાઈટ ઉપર, ત્યાં ક્યાંય એવું કંઈ મંદિર હતું નહીં. એ તો કોરા કમ્પ્લીટ કરવા આવ્યો હતો. He was there to complete the Kora, and he found that he was very close to the destination, but he did not find any pilgrimages, or he did not find any temples. Right? We are stopping the video over here. What happens next? Does he is able to find a temple, or does he is able to complete the Kora? That we'll discuss in the next session. This is a short session, right? But the end we'll discuss in the next part. Till then, bye-bye. Take care, right? The doubts that you have, right? Because of electricity, it's very difficult to solve the doubts. The doubts that you have in today's session, right? Whenever we'll have the next lecture, we'll carry it on and we'll solve your doubts. Okay? If you have any doubts, you can put it in the group or you can contact Bhavik sir, as there is a lack of electricity over there. So I won't be able to even solve your doubts properly. But if you have doubts of today's session, that whatever we have discussed, you can directly send the message to Bhavik sir and he'll send it to me, or you can communicate with me also. I will able to solve your doubts. And the end part we'll discuss in the next session. What happens in the end? Okay, till then, bye bye, take care, enjoy the weekend.